Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good to go. Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, United States Army, retired 22 years, and without a doubt, the single most pressing issue for the great state of Texas is our border security. Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution is the guarantee clause, and it says that the federal government must guarantee to every state in the Union two things. First, a republican form of government, and to protect us from invasion. And when the federal government would fail, the founding fathers in their brilliance wrote in Article 1, Section 10, Clause number 3, what a state can do if actually invaded when there's imminent danger without any admitted delay. I think it is an imminent danger when we are in January, which is National Slavery and Human Trafficking Month, and Texas is the #1 state in the United States of America for human and sex trafficking. It's an imminent danger when Houston and Dallas are the top 2 cities in the United States of America for sex trafficking. It's an imminent danger when last year the United States of America had its largest amount of drug overdoses, over 100,000, due to fentanyl, which is coming across that border. It's an imminent danger when you're being told that you have to have something injected into your body, but yet hundreds of thousands of people, to the tune of 2.5 to 2.6 million, have illegally entered to the United States of America. They have not been told they have to get anything jabbed into their arm. Now, how do we do it? First and foremost, you create a border control zone. Because right now, the federal government has abdicated their constitutional duty and responsibility. And in Article 4, Section 7 of the Texas State Constitution, it says that one of the key aspects of the governor as the commander of the military department to repel invasions. We've got to do better with our National Guard down there. We have to designate the cartels. They're not a business organization, they're a terrorist organization. These 501c3s that are becoming the travel agencies for illegals, we have to revoke their licenses. We have to stop with the madness, no taxpayer-funded benefits, and we must tax the remittances of illegals that have been sent out of the state of Texas to Mexico, Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador. Thank you.
Good evening, it's good to be with you. My name is Chad Prather. It is always an honor to be with these gentlemen, and of course to be with you here in Denton. I would remind everybody that the rules that we were given is that we can't use the same issue twice, so we have to differentiate from one another in that regard. And I'm thankful for that position from Colonel West. I believe that we have to get government out of our life. Government overreach is at an all-time high. Government in Austin is emulating, if not even worse than Washington, D.C. It's become one big, giant, all-consuming blob that is rolling through our lives. Everything it touches, it consumes, it absorbs and rolls on and leaves us in its wake. Under this governor, we've seen the spending increase by $48 billion in the last 7 years. That's 19% increase in spending, while our population's only grown by 5.5%. So our spending is far outgrowing the pace that we have of putting people in here in order to compensate for that spending. We know that Washington, D.C. has a target on the back of Texas. The reason our borders are open is because they want Texas to fall. They realize that we have about 6 years before Texas starts to look significantly like the state of California. Now, there's a lot of people who don't want to believe that, but unfortunately, we know what's happening in these big cities. I like to call them the blueberries that's in the chili. Whether it's Dallas and Fort Worth now, unfortunately, El Paso, San Antonio, Houston, and Austin. Somebody asked me if I got to Austin, do I think I can handle it, since Austin's not like the rest of Texas. Very telling that Austin doesn't represent the state we live in, and that's our capital. We've got to go down, we've got to reduce spending, we've got to reduce government agencies, we've got to reduce the bureaucracies that are dictating to us. This governor has been called by Texas Tribune the most powerful governor in the history of Texas because he sidesteps the legislative process, he acts dictatorially and unilaterally. I'm the guy that wants to make government small and get it out of your life in the state of Texas so we can once again embrace liberty.
Hello, Patriots. Hello, Patriots. I'm Don Huffines. I'd like to say welcome to Denton County. My grandfather started a business up here on the square in 1824. So I've got a lot of history here in Denton County. Well, I'm a lifelong conservative activist. I've been to many state conventions. I've fought for our party platform for decades. I can tell you that my agenda is your agenda, our Republican Party platform. The #1 issue that I can't talk about, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to tell you a very important issue for the state of Texas. Let's get our culture back. Let's win this culture war that we are in. And most things, because I was in the swamp in Austin. I saw it firsthand. I'm the only person running for governor that was actually served in that swamp. I was cussed at and screamed at on the floor of the Texas Senate more than I've ever been in my adult life. And let me tell you, it wasn't by the Democrats. It was by the rhinos. That's what it was about. Most things are downstream of the governor's office. Our virtue, our culture, our legislation. The governor, with his power, and then I know what the tools he's got in his toolbox, can change the perspective of this country. I'm going to buck up every Republican governor in this country. For instance, I'm going to get God back in our classrooms. I'm going to make sure we get prayer back in every classroom in the state of Texas. I'm going to get biblical studies back in the middle schools. I'm going to make sure that when we appoint a board of regents to our universities, they believe in the exceptionalism of America and of Texas. They believe in the free market. Because they're the ones that hire all the faculty and the teachers. They're starting the poison that's penetrated all the way down to our elementary schools. When we get rid of the pornography in our schools and our libraries, and we get rid of CRT, and we stop the sexual mutilation of our children, it's going to be a new day for Texas and the Huffines administration.
The next question begins our series of answer and rebuttal. Colonel West, you will have 2 minutes to answer this question, and then Mr. Prather, Mr. Huffines, you will have 30 seconds to respond, or an additional minute if you choose. Colonel West, under the Biden administration, our economy is suffering supply chain disruptions and high inflation levels not seen since Jimmy Carter. As Texas governor, what steps can you take to address the effect of economic disruption and inflation here in Texas?
Well, first and foremost, I will tell you that no elected official has the enumerated power to decide who or what is essential. And so I would have never allowed ourselves to say that certain businesses can stay open while certain other businesses have to shut down. We lost 2.7 million jobs, and individuals lost their jobs here in Texas. We have 10,000 some odd small businesses that will never come back again. So that's the first thing, is we don't allow those business bankruptcies. The other thing is that we got a lot of ports right here in Texas. And so I will be out there advocating for those ships that are sitting out there outside of Long Beach to just come right through the Panama Canal. Unfortunately, we signed the Panama Canal, pretty much over to the Chinese to control, something that we built. But get those ships to come around here to Texas to unload those goods and services. But I think the important thing that I can do is start looking at how we can reverse the supply chain that we have outsourced to so many different countries, mainly to China, and make sure that we can come back here so we are producing, we are manufacturing here in the great state of Texas. I think that that's the most important thing that we can do, because we're a central hub. When you look at all of these warehouses and distribution centers, we need to be increasing that and providing good quality jobs for people here in the great state of Texas. And so, most importantly, let's get our economy even stronger. Let's make sure we never again put Texas out of work. Let's help this supply chain issue by opening up our ports and going and advocating to all of these other shipping companies to come here to the state of Texas. And let's make sure that Texas continues to be a leader in the economy. If you think about our oil and gas industry, we should not allow anyone, such as Joe Biden, to say unconstitutionally that he is shutting down our oil and gas industry. We need to be producing, consuming, and exporting those energy resources, because that's the way that you undermine a dictator and a tyrant like Vladimir Putin.
We all know that Texas is a wealthy state. It's a wealthy state. We have a lot of independence here, and one of the things that we have to do is we have to stop apologizing for the things which have made us wealthy. Keep Texas open. We do not deem citizens or businesses non-essential, and we stop apologizing for the things that have made us great, and we don't turn ideologies into policies. Folks, these are the things which, when we look at the global leadership of Texas in terms of energy production, and we start to enforce this local government and local leadership to make sure that Texas stays open, we remain great, we remain wealthy, and we remain strong.
I'm going to stop what inflation affects you firsthand every single day, every minute of your life, and that's with your property taxes. That's something you pay all day, every day. Texans are tired of renting their homes from the government. They're tired of renting their businesses from the government. Half the taxes paid by each. This is a terrible way to fund government. It's a priority of the Republican Party to get rid of it. I've got a great plan I've worked on for years to do this. It'll take about 8 years. We're going to put it on a glide path to zero. To zero. I want to call time that.
And 1 extra minute.
That was a minute and a half. 1 minute, okay. We're going to put it to a glide path to zero over 8 years. We're going to gradually phase it out. I'm going to make sure it's a constitutional amendment, so you're going to get a chance to vote on it. So when we cut the head off the snake, it's going to stay dead. We're never going to have an income tax. What we're doing is replacing the ad valorem tax with the excess revenue that comes into the state of Texas. We're not changing the funding formulas for the school districts or the political subdivisions. We're not changing any of that. What we're going to do is take the excess revenue that comes in from the state of Texas and fund it back to the local governments. This is very doable. I know it doesn't. I know it sounds like political rhetoric, but it's not. This is a math problem. And Texans need to own their own real estate. Set the table real fast. Everything you see is essentially owned by the government. Land, your farm, your business, your house. It's all owned by the government, and all you do is rent it from them. They got a first lien on it. It's a terrible way to fund government. We can do better than that. Thank you.
And that is a critical issue, and you're all going to get a chance to talk more about it with this question. This goes to Mr. Prather. What is your specific plan to reduce property taxes in Texas, and what taxes would you increase to replace the current revenue?
Let me be very clear. I believe that taxation is theft, especially under the current way that we deal with taxation. I stated earlier that Texas is a wealthy state. We have a lot of revenue generating ability. We are a global leader in terms of energy. We provide 40% of the nation's oil, 26% of the nation's marketable natural gas, and so on and so forth we go. We have the ability to generate income. Property tax, I believe, is the most immoral tax of all because you truly never own your land. I remind people wherever I go that in the Old Testament, God told his people he would never tax the land because it was an inheritance given to them, a piece of promise for their children and their children's children. And I believe that if the Israelites 6,000 years ago could figure out how not to pay property tax, that the greatest fiscal conservative minds and economists here in the state of Texas should be able to get around it as well. I do believe in a legacy of no state income tax. I believe that we're overspending. We've got to cut that spending and demonstrate from the top. And so we haven't had a state income or state property tax since 1982. We've got to stop putting immoral people in these counties and these local places that don't understand the value of a dollar. Use the surplus, cut the spending, use the surplus, buy the taxes down, the property taxes down. Increase the sales tax by 1.5%, maybe a gas tax by 0.5%, engage in a consumption tax over time, but treat this like the cancer that it is. It must be excised carefully, surgically, and with precision from the state of Texas. It's immoral, and we've got to figure out a way to get rid of it. It can be done, but one of the biggest things, as I alluded to earlier, is we've got to incentivize the private sector. Believe it or not, there's engineers and smart people out there that can make the world flat so you can drive on it without trusting in the government's mediocrity to do a poor job. Let's make sure that Texans are empowered to do what the government won't do and stop taking the money out of your pockets in the name of property taxes.
There's one thing you're going to have if you want to get rid of property tax, or if you want to close the border, or you want to solve any of the issues that affect Texas, and you're going to have a governor that champions it. You're not going to get to the 1-inch line. Of course, we're going to cut state spending, but we're going to get all that excess revenue. Right now, Texas had a record month in November, $3.5 billion in sales tax, all-time record. We're going to take that excess revenue and we're going to buy down property tax with it. We're going to put a little bit more over into sales tax, but we can get this done, and you're going to get a chance to vote on it.
In 2006, 2016, I had the opportunity to sit on the Texas State Sunset Advisory Commission. We need to take the recommendations from the Sunset Advisory Commission over the past 15 to 20 years and get them implemented, because they have not been. And those savings, once again, can go down to the buy down of the taxes that we have assessed against you. The other thing is we have to move away from a baseline budget system, which starts a baseline and goes up and increases spending, to a zero-based budget system. That's how you run your homes, that's how you run your businesses. And the last thing is, as has been mentioned, prior to 1917, we had a consumption-based tax in the United States of America. That's what we're going to transition to.
Next question goes to Senator Huffines. In what way can we control municipal utility districts and similar local taxing entities? What new restrictions, if any, should be enacted to control the tax burden that such local districts can pose?
Well, we've already been talking about this for a couple of questions, and my proposal is to eliminate property tax entirely. You know, we are all tired of renting our homes from the government. We're tired of renting our businesses from the government. Like I said, you really never own any of it. You don't even own your own inventory in your own business. You just rent it from the government. So the burden that municipal utility districts place on the residents in property tax will go away in my plan. It goes away for everyone. We have no appraisal districts. No one's going to need to know what your land's worth, your property's worth, your house. It's none of anyone else's business. This is going to create more prosperity than we can even figure. Our current numbers are showing about $100 billion in net worth creation overnight. We think it's going to be a lot higher than that. Our revenues in the state of Texas are going up almost double digits right now. So we might can really get this done in less than 8 years. This is a very doable situation. It really is. But this is about not just, imagine for a moment the money you're going to save. It's not just that, which is tremendous. But this is about your economic liberty. This is about who we are as Americans and Texans. That we're not going to be serfs to the government anymore. The government's not going to be your landlord anymore. And they are, but we can stop it. And we can do better than that. This is Texas. The paradigm of how we operate in the past does not dictate our future. Our future is unlimited. It's incredible what's possible when we see beyond the obvious, which is the motto of my company, seeing beyond the obvious. Thank you.
Even though he was a Democrat, Tip O'Neill said something that's so important. He said, all politics are local. So the first thing that has to happen is we all need to get more engaged in our city and council elections. We need to be more engaged in our school board elections. We need to be more engaged in our county commission elections, because those are the people that allow things that are happening at the local level. What I will do in the governor's office is set the example of showing what can be done if we're serious about cutting the growth and the spending of the federal government and getting more of these agencies and these programs sunset and getting rid of them. But you have to do your part as well in electing the right people.
I want to say once again, Jeff, we've got to stop putting immoral people in these places and positions of power to spend your money. When I say immoral, I'm talking about people who don't understand the value of a dollar. We know that right now with this infrastructure plan in Washington, D.C., the Build Back Better nonsense that's going on, they don't understand the dollar. They throw around terms like trillions. They don't even know how many zeros is in that. Folks, we've got to get involved to the point. Listen, if I can get involved with what I'm doing in this governor race, me, then God knows you can as well. Let's replace these immoral people with the folks who have value and value what Texas is worth.
Okay, we'll shift gears a little bit. This question is for Colonel West. In prior forums, we've heard general agreement among the three of you that Texans should be permitted to vote on a Texit referendum. Let's take that one step further. In the event that 51% or more of Texans vote yes to Texit, what steps would you take next in response as governor?
Well, the steps that I would take next, I guess I'd have to get ready to be the president of the Republic of Texas. I think what you have to do is you go back and you make sure that the federal understands that obviously we cannot stand any more of their unconstitutional actions. The United States Constitution is a restricted document on the powers of the federal government. If you read Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, there are about 16 to 18 things that the Constitution says the federal government, that's their duties and responsibilities. But unfortunately, when we look at the 10th Amendment, where it says all of those powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states and to the people, we got the opportunity right now to set the understanding that states are preeminent here, that the individual is preeminent here. And what we have to do is go back and dust off that old book when they established the Republic of Texas and start making sure that we can stand up our own. And we can do that if it ever comes to that. But I think that right now, Texas has the ability to lead. There are so many people that are looking to Texas to step up. And why do you think they are targeting Texas again at our border? When you read H.R. 1, and what H.R. 1 says, that there will be no picture ID to vote in the United States of America. There will be no voter registration roll review in the United States of America. That we will no longer have to go to polling locations. They're just going to mail ballots out to us, unsolicited ballots. There will be online voter registration, same-day voter registration, same-day voting, and illegals will get the chance to vote. We have to stand up against this totalitarianism and the tyranny that is coming down from this federal government. And if that day comes, we have to go back to what was established on the 21st of April, 1836. And why do I say it was established there? Because that's when we beat Santa Anna. We can once again be the Republic of Texas. But first and foremost, we have to defend the Texas Republic.
I want to remind everybody that the Texas bill is not necessarily secession. It is a path to secession. Remember that. I believe that if we were to secede, that we were to be in that situation, that we'd also be making some phone calls to about 25 other states who'd be doing it as well. Because let's face it, the globalists have already ceded Washington, D.C. away from us, away from the Patriots. So folks, what we've got to do is make sure that we understand the reality of what the 10th Amendment and the sovereignty of Texas truly means, and begin to enforce that now, because we are the one last bastion of freedom, size, and economy that can put D.C. back on track. Let's do that now.
First thing the governor needs to do is call a special session of the legislature. This is a decision of the terms and conditions of the legislature would have to set to the federal government. But let me tell you, I'm going to take some steam off that kettle. Give me 2 years. I'm going to prove to you what it means for Texas to be sovereign, not just to you and not just to the United States. I'm going to prove it to the whole free world what it means for Texas to be sovereign. Because this is Texas. We're not going to bend a knee to no man, to no government for any reason. Thank you.
Next question, Mr. Prather. How would you lead a return to traditional values and patriotism in our public schools?
Well, first and foremost, I believe the public education system should be burned to the ground. You've heard me say that. It gets people's attention. That's not a slight on educators or teachers. I feel sorry for the educators who dreamed of being able to mold and educate young minds, to be able to teach them, test them, evaluate them, promote them, and smack them on the rear end and tell them good luck in life. But these days, we have an education system that's built on a humanist system. It's churning out little Marxists, little communists. They graduate college deeply in debt with a degree in undecided. We haven't taught them how to think critically or with any complexity of thought. And we think that's okay because we're training our kids for a test. We know, just based on social media, that half the people in Texas think that primaries split votes and split elections. Folks, we've got to get an understanding of not only history, but civics back in place when it comes to our education. I believe that we should standardize a test, not the STAR test, in public education, but I believe before you graduate from high school in the state of Texas, you should have to pass a citizenship test. Let's get back to pledging allegiance. Let's get back to the national anthem, understanding our history without revisionism. Protect monuments, protect the statues, protect those things which have made us great, not only as Americans, but especially as Texans. And I believe the fight is with the parents. Right now, Williamson County, there's a document out there that's telling middle school teachers that they can't discuss a child's sexuality or gender preference with the parents. That's happening in Texas, folks. That's happening in this public education system. we're not only losing patriots, we're losing individuals and human beings with any sense of dignity that are made in the image of God with that understanding. We've got to change that, because if you don't have that sense of self, you'll never have that sense of patriotism in this great state.
Education is fundamental to what the government does. I've been a champion, though, of school choice, parental choice, education freedom. When I was in the Senate, I'm the one that wrote a lot of those bills, because I believe in competition in our education system. It lowers the price and increases the quality of everything it touches. I'm a businessman. It's going to do the same thing for education. But we just remember, the eyes and the ears of what goes on in that classroom is the parents. It's the parents. We can tell them they got to study Western Civ and all that, but we don't know how they teach it. Thank you.
I'm a product of school choice. And the fact that we have Republicans in charge of the state of Texas who can't get school choice passed, that's going to change when I get to be down there as a governor. The other thing is that there will be no taxpayer-funded money that goes to any independent school district that wants to teach social, emotional learning, cultural education, critical race skills. If you're a college university and you want to teach toxic masculinity, use your own endowment funds, but you're not going to get the funds from the state of Texas to be able to do that. But the most important thing you have to realize, the most important elected position in Texas, in America, school board.
The next question is for Senator Huffines. The Texas State website lists more than 250 boards and commissions whose members are appointed by the governor. What process will you lead to be sure that only qualified conservatives are appointed to these important boards, including such functions as ERCOT, Texas Economic Development, University of Texas, Texas A&M Board of Regents, and the Board on Pardons and Paroles?
This is the power of the governor that's often not mentioned and most folks don't know about. It's the power of appointments. It's hundreds of boards, hundreds of agencies across the state of Texas. This is critically important to restoring our virtue, restoring our culture, and restoring our conservative values. As he just said, almost every agency in the state of Texas is appointed by the governor. 80% of the money we spend in Austin's in two buckets: health and human services and education. The governor appoints the directors of both. The governor appoints the medical board, the pharmacy board, the medical board that's been taking doctor's license because they're trying to prescribe prescriptions for COVID and trying to stop the spread of this virus. The pharmacy board's doing the same thing. The insurance board, the real estate commission, all of that is by the governor. And the one that he just mentioned that's more important than we normally give it credit for is the Board of Regents of every university in the state of Texas, every college. And that's where the poison starts. That's where every teacher goes to get certified. And they're all getting brainwashed. And the Board of Regents is in charge of hiring, of course, the chancellors and the president. I'm going to make sure that these are all patriots. God-fearing patriots that believe in Jesus, believe in the fundamental role of government, which is always to defend your God-given liberties. I'm going to make sure it's patriots like you that are on the board, and not all the rich people that always donate. And 200,000, oh, you can be on the Board of Regents of your choice of the college. I'm going to make sure that I vet. It's who you surround yourself with that makes all the difference. And the touchstone of my campaign, and when I was in the Texas Senate, was always liberty. If you don't believe in it, don't come apply. Thank you.
And we're going to make sure that we have constitutional conservatives in these positions. Because the most important thing is you need to have folks that understand that the individual, their rights, their freedoms, their liberty, and their sovereignty is supreme over the institution of government. Philosophically, they have to agree with that. The other thing that a lot of people don't talk about is that the governor of the state of Texas has the ability to initiate impeachment procedures on these state judges that are out there releasing violent criminals onto the streets. 155 people in Harris County have been murdered because of felons that they have been releasing. I'm going to start impeaching judges as well.
Let's go back to the the idea of getting government out of our lives. We got to make it smaller, and one of the things that we have to do is stop allowing these people who are wild-eyed, leftist progressives with weird ideologies that we're turning into policies to have positions of power. We've got to get rid of the lobbyists. We've got to get rid of the bureaucrats and people who do not have delegated authority to represent us. Let's get back to integrity, make it smaller, make politics boring again, and get it out of your life. Conservative values must matter first and foremost. That's the priority, and there is no equivocation on that.
Okay, next question, Colonel West. Do you support 100% abolition of abortion in Texas, or do you believe there should be certain exceptions, such as cases of rape or incest? If you support exceptions, how many months into the pregnancy would you permit the exception?
You know, that's one of the points that, personally, I do believe that if a woman's body is criminally violated, that's something that God and family have to sit down and discuss. And that's something that I believe in, because I have 2 daughters. But I will tell you this, when I went out to Lubbock, Texas last year, and I marched with them in the March for Life, because they wanted to make sure that Lubbock, Texas became a sanctuary city for life. See, it's not about what I believe personally if I'm the governor. It's about what the people who call me to govern them, what they believe in. And that's what we will implement. And I will tell you, you will find nobody that is more vehemently against Planned Parenthood. And the fact that here in the state of Texas, we have the 2nd largest facility for murdering unborn babies in the world in Houston, Texas. And everyone wants to talk about white supremacy and racism and all of this, but yet no one is talking about the fact that Margaret Sanger was the founder of Planned Parenthood. No one talks about the fact that Planned Parenthood has 73% of their clinics in minority neighborhoods. No one is talking about the fact that since Roe v. Wade, 25 million black babies have been murdered in the womb. That's the genocide that nobody wants to talk about. Yet everyone's out there running around with Black Lives Matter shirts and things of that nature. I've been talking about that. Here in Denton County, I stood and did the gala at the Women to Women Pregnancy Center. If you talk about the folks down there in the downtown Dallas Pregnancy Center, Involved for Life, I'm an ambassador for life for them. Out there in down in Bryan, College Station, 40 Days for Life. I went down and spoke for them. Out there in Midland, Odessa, I've spoken for the Caroline Pregnancy Center in New Mexico. I've spoken for the family policy centers in Nebraska, Illinois, and the state of Washington. I've been back to my home state of Atlanta, Georgia, and also in Augusta, Georgia, to talk about the life issue. I believe in the preservation of life. That's your very first amendment. I mean, your very first inalienable right. But I do think that we have to think and consider what happens to a woman that has her body criminally violated.
My personal conviction is that life begins at conception and fertilization, and that life is created in the image of God. I believe that life is sacred, and I believe that abortion is a synonym for murder. And I don't believe that life beginning by accident or by assault changes that image of God. And I believe that DNA printed there is there for the rest of their life until not only physical death, but ultimately eternal life begins. I do not believe in abortion under any circumstances, and I fight for the rights of the unborn and the voices of those against them.
My position's been up on my website since I entered the campaign in May. I'm for the abolition of abortion completely. I believe that life starts at conception to natural death, no exceptions at all. Even with the heartbeat bill, Patriots, 25,000 children will lose their lives in Texas over the next 12 months at least. This is murder. This is the communion of the devil, and we're going to stop it.
Mr. Prather, do you support or oppose expansion of legalized gambling in Texas, and why?
This is a 2-minute? You said it like it was a lightning round. Felt like I was at the blackjack table. Can't count to 21 that fast. I know that the lobbyists are coming in here from New Mexico and Oklahoma and Louisiana, and they are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure that gambling does stay out of the state of Texas. We already have a lottery that is here, which funds of which are being misused. That needs to be fixed immediately. We have certain places where sportsbook gambling, racetrack gambling is legal. Grand Prairie comes to mind. Me personally, I believe that there could be some revenue for legalized gambling. I believe that we have to do it the right way. We've seen from other places the ways not to do it, the ways to do it. I think that sportsbook betting could bring in a lot of revenue in the state of Texas. But I do believe that if we were to bring casinos into the state of Texas, that they should be destinations. They shouldn't be in urban centers, which increases more and more poverty. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the legislature and ultimately what's on the ballot, and do you, the people, want that? I'm not going to stand in the way of the will of the people. We can sit around and we can speculate and determine whether something's moral or immoral or whatever it may be, and in the 21st century, all of our decisions and our ideas on that have changed in a big way. But at the end of the day, what hasn't changed is the will of the people, and right now the will of the people is not being heard. I've heard people talk about that and other forms of legalization of other things that have been outlawed in the state of Texas since our existence. Then people want to see a change in that. What do you say? At the end of the day, I'm not going to stand in the way of the will of the people. I think there's ways to navigate it and to deal with these situations that may be a little bit controversial. But at the end of the day, what's in the best interest of this state keeps us free, keeps us wealthy, and keeps us on the right path of liberty.
I'm against casino gaming in Texas. Texas has enough revenue. It has plenty of revenue. This isn't about revenue. This is a food trough for the lobbyists who are going to come down to Austin, and they're going to spend millions of dollars trying to determine who's going to get the license. Look, what's the matter for a road trip to Oklahoma? I mean,
It's Oklahoma.
no. Like, if you want to do it, just going up there. It's great. It's going to be fantastic. But we don't. It creates a lot more government, a lot more regulations, and we don't need it in Texas. That's my opinion.
I'm against casino gambling here in the state of Texas, and this is why. As long as Texas is the #1 state in the United States of America for human sex trafficking, we do not need to have casino gambling here in the state of Texas. Because we already have illegal gaming rooms. You talk to the people down along the border. They're being controlled by not just the cartels, but also Chinese gangs as well. So I do not want to give them a platform by which they can continue to make money. Oh, by the way, they make $25 to $30 million a week on human trafficking in Texas.
Next question goes to Senator Huffines. Some people contend that the governor of Texas is in a position of power and persuasion sufficient to get anything done through the legislature that the governor chooses. Do you agree with that proposition, and what process would you install to get your priorities into law?
I totally agree with that statement. If you get anything out of this meeting tonight, what we're saying or what I'm saying, I want you to really realize that the governor of Texas can get almost any piece of legislation done just about any time he wants. He's the governor of Texas. He's the leader of the Republican Party of Texas. He's supposed to be the mediator between the House and the Senate. He's the one that's supposed to be leading and campaigning for our legislative priorities right here, our Republican priorities. This is my second favorite document. I took it wherever I went in Austin, trying to convince the legislators down there of why we're here. And I can tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure we get your priorities into law. Those are my priorities. I saw what it was like to be in the club. I saw what it's like to be in the swamp. And let me tell you, the first thing right after inauguration, the leadership comes into the Senate, and you know what they said? Welcome to the most exclusive club in the state of Texas. You're so lucky to be here. There's less than 150 of you still alive. And he said, your loyalty always lies with your fellow club members. You will never do anything to hold them accountable. You will never do anything to embarrass them. You're so lucky to be in the Texas Senate. And let me tell you, I know what those club guys want more than anything. They want to get a bill done. I get last call on every single piece of legislation that comes out of that building. I get first call on the budget, and I get last call on the budget. Two huge tools in the toolbox. What you see happens in Austin is most of it's for political show. It's not really what happens. I can tell you, I know the tools, I know the players, and I know the tricks that they're gonna pull. And I can tell you, I don't care if I veto 700 bills. I don't care if they I'm gonna stop them from putting Democrat committee chairman, because I'll veto every bill in that committee.
In January of 2023, the governor stands up and delivers the State of the State address, and the governor therefore lays out his legislative priorities. I appointed Jill Glover to be the chairperson of the Republican Party of Texas Legislative Priorities Committee, and she did an incredible job. The thing is that those priorities are the priorities of the governor, and the immediate thing that happens is they can start working on those instead of pushing them off to March the 12th. And that's exactly what we'll do. We'll start developing model legislation based upon those priorities this summer and into the fall so that we're ready to go. A model budget and everything. We're going to set the narrative.
In a recent article, Texas Tribune called this governor the most powerful governor in the history of the state of Texas. It went on to list the reasons as being he sidesteps the legislative process in order to get what he wants done. You need a governor that is willing to make Texas a constitutional sanctuary state. That when things are done here in this state, it's done legislatively, it's done constitutionally, and it's done with your priorities and your liberty in mind, not unilaterally and dictatorially as we've seen done over and over in the last 18 months by this governor. We've got to make that change now.
We're going to change things up just a little bit. We're going to have 2 or 3 more policy questions, but we're going to shift to a fun lightning round, and I'm going to switch microphones so y'all can pass this quickly. And the way this round works, I'll read the question. Each candidate will have 5 seconds to answer. They can give a reason. If they can get it in those 5 seconds, they'll be held in contempt if they go over. And I've also asked them, by way of challenge, not to repeat an answer that's already been given for the question. So we'll see how that works. All right. The first lightning round question, and we'll start with Colonel West and move the mic this way, and then we'll start with Mr. Prather and then Mr. Huffines. Okay, so Colonel West, besides Reagan and Trump, what other U.S. president is your favorite?
Abraham Lincoln.
Well, you picked the only 3 right there. There we go. I want to go with George. Golly. Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
You can pick Washington.
Washington.
All right, Mr. Prather, who is your favorite Texan?
Sam Houston.
This one. Oh. Favorite Texan. Mayor Lamar.
Davy Crockett.
Each of you is just using 1 or 2 seconds, so feel free. But which book of the Bible is your favorite?
Revelations.
The book of Ephesians.
Joshua.
Okay, go back on Colonel West. Besides the Bible, what is your favorite book?
Democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville.
Texas. Larry McMurtry.
Lonesome Dove.
Mr. Prather, what is your favorite movie?
Gladiator.
The original Spartacus with Kirk Douglas.
Patriot, Mel Gibson.
Senator Huffines, we'll start with you now. I'm getting into meddling. What is your favorite college football team?
It used to be University of Texas before they got woke.
I stick with a team that has a nickname that is indicative of their service here. That's the Tennessee Volunteers, my alma mater.
Likewise, where all my money went, the University of Georgia Bulldogs.
I believe we're back on Colonel West. Now we're going to shift to a few policy lightning items. On day one, when you enter the office of the governor, what is the first big action you will take?
We will designate the cartels as transnational and narco-criminal terrorists and go after their numbers.
We're going to serve notice to Washington, D.C. that the target on our back is no good anymore, and we are going to establish ourselves a constitutional sanctuary state.
You want to use your mimic?
No, but I can't repeat there.
Well, of course, the border is more important than anything. And we're going to close the border, and we're going to close all 25 crossings over that river immediately to put the economic pressure on Mexico.
What state agency would you work to cut first?
The TABC.
The TEA.
Two good ones, guys. Those are really good. I'm gonna cut in half Health and Human Services.
Okay, and your hotlines. This one's kind of a layup, but I'll ask it. Do you prefer voting centers or precinct voting? Centralized voting
Oh,
centers?
precinct voting.
Okay, and you can't repeat this one. We'll see. Because it get kind of tough on the third.
Decentralized without a precinct voting.
Precinct voting.
Colonel West, who is your favorite previous Texas governor?
Oh, well, can I go back to President of the Republic of Texas? I'll say Mirabeau Lamar, originally from Georgia.
I would say Sam Houston. Keep government simple. Keep government simple and govern wisely and as little as possible. I had to get it straight there. Sam Houston.
It'd have to be a long way back. I always like Mirabeau Lamar. I'm going to repeat.
All right, that's fair enough. And we got two more. Mr. Prather, what's your favorite food and drink?
Pizza. Tonight it's going to be wings, but pizza and Shinerbach beer.
Grilled hot dogs and lemonade.
Mexican combo plate with unsweet tea.
It's Whataburger number 2. The last lightning round question starts with Senator Huffines. Outside of the United States, what's your favorite country?
Favorite country? Oh, Mexico.
My first tour of duty in the United States Army was in Italy.
Well, since we're talking about beer, Ireland.
Was that what we were talking about?
Well, it was what was on my mind still.
I get it. Okay. We now will go back to the 2-minute questions. We'll do 2 or 3 more depending on how time permits. We'll start with Colonel West. What is your opinion regarding the Texas Enterprise Fund?
The Texas Enterprise Fund is an indicative of crony capitalism. Your taxpayer dollars should not be going to entice any business or corporation to come to the greatest state in the United States of America. If a business or a corporation wants to get out of a failing blue state with failed economic policies, they should just want to come here to Texas where we have the right type of policies. We should not be giving these things out to individuals. And furthermore, when you look at the means by which we are losing ground as far as being a strong constitutional conservative state, we need to make sure that these businesses and corporations that are moving here, they talk to their employment base. They're going to pick up and move here. And get them to understand the reason why they're leaving these places that are failing is because they cannot continue to sustain their businesses. If they want to continue to fail, like they're there in California, Illinois, New York, and New Jersey, leave them there and come here and hire Texans. But we will get rid of the Texas Enterprise Fund because, again, that's part of the reduction of the size and scope of government so that your taxpayer dollars are going to what is important, your safety, your security, to make sure that your way of life is protected and the services of the government, as according to the Texas State Constitution, is adhered to.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, if I had my way and could get away with it, when you move to the state of Texas, you'd have to have a 4-year probationary period before you can even vote. But we have a governor that's thrown the doors open to multinational corporations and big tech, bringing them in here, making Texas home. And every time we say, well, those are jobs for Texans, are they really? Because they're bringing their money, they're bringing their influence, and they're bringing their ideologies here. They're both indoctrinated and inoculated, folks, and they're bringing the wrong thing to Texas, and it's time to make them accountable if they're going to do business on Texas soil.
It's not just the enterprise fund that's the problem, it's all subsidies to businesses that are relocating here. We got a lot of local governments that do the same thing. It's not fair, it's not equitable to the businesses that are already here. It's going to stop completely in Huffines administration. We got a lot of political refugees from California that are coming here. They're coming here for the right reasons or wherever they're coming from. But when these corporations move here and forcibly relocate their team members, we've got a big problem. We're going to stop it.
Back to Mr. Prather. This is a little bit of a long one. I think I can break it down. The question is, Canada has just enacted a law that forbids treatments designed to change or repress a person's gender expression in a way it would align with biological sex, and to forbid even pastors and other counselors from working with individuals to alleviate their feelings. How would you address such a proposal should it be raised in Texas?
We're not doing that. Folks, I didn't know that George Orwell was going to be a fulfilled prophecy so soon. But this is what we're facing. We're seeing it happening in Australia, Canada, of course. And you know the problem in Canada, there's some good folks in Canada, some good places in Canada. You go to Western Canada, there's some good folks. It's Texas of the North, right? But that's what happens when you have weak, panty-waist leadership and a guy like Justin Trudeau. To continue to push forward an affront before God himself and thumb your nose at his creation and his identity of created he man and woman and said it was good. And then to entertain these notions of identity and gender crisis, which is nothing more than schizophrenia on display and being paraded around as normalcy. But then to go even further and to allow this to happen in the lives of our children, so that we're actually helping and even receiving government officials, this governor even receiving donations from clinics that specialize in gender modification. So here's the thing, we're going to eradicate the notion. There's a lot of things that should not exist in civil society, and certainly not in a place like Texas. Things like gender modification and this confusion in which bathroom to use. Listen, you know if you're a man, you know if you're a woman. Pushing your ideologies on other people in a woke cancel culture is nonsense, and to be short and frank about it, it's utterly demonic, and it has no place to stay.
It was my campaign that got the Department of Family and Protective Services to remove from their website the transgender ideology that were brainwashing the children across the state of Texas, that you were paying for that website. And it was for all the foster kids. We got Abbott to pull it down, and that was proven with a FOIA request. Greg Abbott recruited this lady from Kansas to run the Department of Family and Protective Services. 13,000 people work there. She is a rank liberal leftist, and we got them to pull that down. Of course, I'm going to stop it when we get into office. Thank you.
We have to stop using the language of the left. There's no such thing as transgenderism.
Amen.
The American Psychiatric Association has said that this is a mental condition called gender dysphoria. And that's what we need to start addressing. One of the legislative priorities of the Republican Party of Texas was to end child gender modification. Republicans in the House and the Senate did not allow that legislation to go through. The governor didn't support it, and also the lieutenant governor and the Speaker of the House killed it. We're going to make sure that we allow our kids to be kids. No more puberty blockers, hormonal therapies, or surgeries.
Senator Huffines, can you identify any planks in the current platform of the Republican Party of Texas with which you disagree? And if so, explain why your position differs.
I'm gonna think about that. There's 300. You know, I can't think of any right now. I mean, I just love our party platform. I've fought for it for 25 years. And this has been a big struggle for us. How many of y'all been to a state convention? Fantastic. That's a good amount. Or a county convention. And you know, the main thing that we do as Republicans is work on our priorities, our resolutions. And we have the biggest political convention in the world in Texas every other year. If you haven't been, you really should go. It's tremendous. You really should go. 7,000, 8,000, 6,000 people. We all vote on every single plank in our party platform. And we have over 300 of them. I think the closest that one might come to failing is like 65% of the vote. Most of them are 80, 95% of the vote. And many of these issues you decided in the primary, and you're going to be voting again on a lot of these March the 1st, or an early voting. By the way, early voting starts on February 14th, for our primary elections on March the 1st. But this is fundamental to who we are. Our party platform clearly defines what it means to be a Texas Republican, and clearly defines our legislative priorities, and we boil it down every session to 4 or 5 issues, 9 issues, and every year we go down to Austin begging to get some of this stuff done. And you know why it isn't done? Because Greg Abbott doesn't want it done. He doesn't believe in our party platform. When I go down there and talk to the rest of the caucus about it, they make fun of it. They really do. They don't believe in it than what you believe in. This is my agenda. And I don't think there's a single plank in there I really don't disagree with. Thank you.
Having been the chair of the Republican Party of Texas, I was the keeper of that holy grail. It was the things that the constitutional conservative grassroots people here in Texas said, these are what are important to us. And of course, they elevated certain things to be their priorities. And if you remember, there was one person that stood up against the governor, signed up to a lawsuit against him. He extended early voting from 2 to 3 weeks. There was one person that said, we're going to add a 9th legislative priority. That was to curtail executive overreach for the 87th session. Of course, you saw that was killed. But that's what I will live by.
I am very thankful for the GOP priorities, and I'm thankful for the men and women who make sure that those happen. And let me just remind everybody that it's a litmus test. It reminds you if the people who are elected representatives with that delegated authority are truly representing the priorities of you. And you know if they are, you know if they're not. You know that this legislative session, you know that this governor, you know that this lieutenant governor, you know the Speaker of the House have not done that. They failed in that role. Let's hold them accountable to these priorities and make this a reality come March.
This is the last round of 3 questions, and then we'll go into closing statements, okay? But we'll start again with you, Colonel West. It sounds like I may have a conflict of interest here, but what is your position on selection of judges across Texas, from the top court of criminal appeals to the Texas Supreme Court, down to the district level trial courts, as to whether they should be appointed by the governor or elected by the public?
They should be elected by the public. They're public servants. The other thing that you have to understand is that judges are supposed to interpret the law. We're not supposed to be looking at their ideological agendas. They're not supposed to have anything other than understand what the rule of law is. As I said, the Texas State Constitution gives the governor the ability to start impeachment hearings against certain classifications of judges, especially these state judges. And when you look at what is happening in Harris County, again, 155 people, it's been tracked, have lost their lives because judges have released violent felons and criminals back onto the streets. This happened here. One of the decisions that just recently came down, I kind of have to scratch my head about, was the Criminal Court of Appeals down there in Austin, Texas. Said that no longer can the Attorney General try and adjudicate these cases about voter fraud. That it has to be passed over to the district attorneys. The top urban population centers in the state of Texas, the district attorneys there, are all Soros County folks. Dallas County and Harris County and Barron County and Travis County. We have got to make sure that we hold them accountable to stand up for the rule of law and not just an ideological agenda like we see the district attorney doing up there in New York City. So I will tell you without a doubt, you pick those judges, but you've got to pay attention to who the judges are. And I will tell you, most times folks don't pay attention to who's out there running for judge. Am I right? They don't study and make sure that they show themselves approved. And then the next thing you know, you get these incredible people that are up there not doing what is right by you, but what is right by their ideological agenda. So I will definitely be keeping an eye on the judges here in the state of Texas. They're not upholding the rule of law, they're going to come see the old colonel.
We know that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So we need to make sure that these judges are elected by the people so that the people are the ones that remain in power ultimately. That they are elevating the rule of law, also that justice is blind and that we are actually upholding that rule of law in a proper and constitutional way. Keep the power in the hands of the people. At the end of the day, folks, it is up to you to put them there. It's up to the governor to make sure they're worthy of staying there and holding them accountable in that position.
They should be elected. I'm the one that filed all the term limit bills in Austin when I was there. I believe in term limits from the governor to the dog catcher. And the key here is to make sure we got term limits on our judges. Now, if it's 12 years or whatever the number is, but we got to get these people out of office and let them go home and do something else. And so I'm all for term limits. That's going to solve a lot of the problems.
Mr. Prater, we've seen leadership of governors in places like the state of Florida, even the state of South Dakota. What would you do as governor of the state of Texas to help influence the rest of the nation to be red?
Well, the first thing is we're not in competition with Kristi Noem in South Dakota. We're not in competition with Ron DeSantis in Florida. Right now, our competition is with the people who are elected leaders in our own state. I want Texas to go back to being great. I want us to be the bastion of liberty that the rest of the nation anchors its sense of freedom to and looks to us as leadership and examples. Right now, we're not leading. We're not leading statistically. We're not leading in terms of freedom and opportunity, healthcare, education, any categories across the board. So I want you to have so much freedom because the government's been taken out of your life and you can go out there and you know what you can do? You can make all the money you want to make. You can keep as much of it as you possibly can. You can own your home. You can retire one day, sit on the front porch and drink that Shiner beer and watch your grandchildren play while being left alone by government, bureaucracy, and these appointees and all these things and die happy and go be in that Texas in the sky with the Lord. You know, this radical way of thinking. Folks, what we got to do is get to a point where we look at a guy like Ron DeSantis and pat him on the head and say, that was a good try, Ron. But we're going to take it from here. We're going to show the rest of America what freedom looks like, not put your finger in the air like this governor does to see which way the political polls are leaning. He spends $25,000 a week on polls. Somebody with a backbone who's going to put up a standard and say, this is Texas, and we're going to be the leader perennially across the United States of America. Can any of you tell me what the flag of South Dakota looks like? You can't. Our women turn a Texas flag into a bikini every summer and float down the river. Folks, you know what the Lone Star looks like. You know. People come to this country. They're proud to visit Texas. Let's make sure that that humble arrogance that we walk with is well justified. And when we say everything is bigger in Texas, the biggest thing here is our freedom.
Well, for instance, my border plan is real simple. The key to my border plan is I'm never asking permission from the federal government to secure the Texas border. This alone will send such a message to the rest of the nation. They will tremble. The leftists will tremble. I will buck up every Republican governor across the nation. I'll give them political cover because I'm not only not asking permission to secure the Texas border, I'm not asking permission from the federal government to do anything.
You know, when I served in the United States Army, if you were a platoon leader or company commander or battalion commander, you were never in competition with your brother commanders. You're always there to make sure that it says in the Bible, iron sharpens iron. Sometimes you got to be the main effort. Sometimes you had to be the supporting effort. But the bottom line was you were focused on one thing, accomplishing the goal, achieving the objective. And that's what we're going to do here in Texas. Sometimes we take the preeminent front. Other times we look at the ideas that another governor has. But the most important thing, we bond together as constitutional conservatives.
Okay, last question before closing statements is to Senator Huffines. What can you do as governor to ensure real election integrity across Texas?
The foundation of our constitutional republic is to have confidence in our elections. And when the foundation breaks, all heck's going to break loose. It's one of the main causes in the history of humanity of civil war. The key here is to make sure Texans have confidence that their votes aren't being stolen. I think people cheat in elections. I think people have cheated in elections since the caveman had elections. Well, the key here is enforcement of the election laws. We've got a lot of laws. In Abbott, you signed the bill to change the felonies into misdemeanors. But the key is enforcing the law. So I've got a great plan. I'm creating a law enforcement division out of DPS, a new division out of DPS. I have hundreds of officers in it. It's called Government Corruption Election Integrity Division. That's all they're going to focus on is just that. No dope, no murder, anything else. They're going to follow the ballots. They're going to know where the ballots are. They're going to know where the machines are stored. If we still have software, which I hope we don't, I hope we go to all paper ballots and numbered paper ballots, by the way. They're going to be in Central County. They'll be in every county of the state of Texas. We're going to have a new court system because you're never going to prosecute or convict a Democrat for cheating a Republican in Dallas County or in Harris County and these other counties. So I'm moving all venue out of the counties. I'm having a new court system, a new prosecution system, a new judge system. I'm going to make sure that we convict people for cheating in our elections. But it's not just that, it's also government corruption. Who are you going to call when you think someone's cheating? Who are you calling? Who are you going to call when you think your school board's corrupt or your county commissioners are stealing from you or anybody else? There's a lot of corruption. I uncovered a big one in Dallas County. I got 6 people put in prison, including the city mayor pro tem of the city council of Dallas, Dwayne Caraway, serving 7 years. They were stealing tens of millions of dollars. The scary part was how easy it was to catch them. We got a lot of corruption.
If I will stand up against the sitting governor in the state of Texas and call him out for unconstitutionally changing Texas election law by extending early voting from 2 weeks to 3 weeks, I think that gives you a measure of who I am. We'll make sure that our Secretary of State's office, if we're going to have voting machines, they will vet the right and proper voting machines that we will use in the state of Texas. We will have an auditable paper trail that goes with that. We will not have voting machines that are tied up into the internet. But most importantly, we got to send a message to the progressive socialist left. If you break our Texas election laws, you're going to be pounding rocks in prison.
I'm going to go ahead and ask for another minute as well, okay? Folks, our votes have to count. Your privilege as an American, your ability as a citizen to vote and know that that vote counts, that it's legitimate, is one of the most precious things we have. Our freedom depends on it. Our liberty depends on it. Our republic depends on it. As governor, I want to see, I want to appoint a Secretary of State. I want a Secretary of State who is willing to legally dump these voter rolls across the state of Texas. You are now unregistered to vote. It's up to you to go re-register. Let's make it legal. Let's determine when a person shows up at a polling place that they are a legal citizen. They show an ID. They walk into a polling place that has no computers, no machines, no internet, no Wi-Fi. The only mechanical thing there is a camera that is on 24/7 watching those votes being cast and counted. There are no cars that pull up into that polling place unexpected under the cover of night. We will allow objective eyeballs to watch this process, and if we're found meddling, then that person will be held accountable by felony. Folks, this is what we have to do to secure these elections. It's worth the sacrifice, the effort, the energy that it would take, but let's make this process legal and legitimate once again.
Hasn't this panel been amazing? Before we go on the floor, joining in thanking them and showing their appreciation. Thank you. We will now go into closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and we will begin with Colonel West.
On 31 July 1982, I took a real simple oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That I took that obligation freely without any purpose of evasion or mental reservation, so help me God. There are soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen out here in this audience that took that oath as well. My dad took that oath when he served in World War II. My older brother took that oath when he served in Vietnam. My nephew, who I talked to this morning, he took that oath. He's waiting to come out on the battalion command list. My wife, Angela, her dad, he took that oath. Served 24 years, 2 tours of duty in Vietnam. That's what this is all about. It's about continuation of the oath that I took and honoring that oath. Because when I look at what is happening in the United States of America, what is happening here in the great state of Texas, there are people that are out there violating that Constitution that I was willing to make the last full measure of devotion for, that I saw young men and young women make the last full measure of devotion for. And when I look at what is happening in our Texas National Guard right now, where in the last 2.5 months, we have had 5 members of the Texas National Guard commit suicide. Just yesterday, we had 1 suicide attempt that was thwarted. Our men and women need to have someone that understands what it means to be willing to lay down their life. Someone that would never tell them that you cannot fire back on the people that are firing upon you. Someone that has been in a position of decisive leadership. Not politicized leadership, and not, definitely, the leadership that we see right now. All I'm asking is you consider me to do exactly what so many members of my family have done, to serve you. And I look forward to the day that I can take the oath to the Texas State Constitution. Thank you.
I want to say thank you. I'm humbled. Crisscrossing this state, I see so many people with the spirit of Texas that is alive and well. I see it in your eyes. I hear it in your heart. I'm thankful for these gentlemen on my left and my right. I'm thankful that they're part of this race. You know, I get to tell jokes for a living. I get to run my mouth for a living. It's very therapeutic. It's not always productive, but I get to have a good time. And a lot of times folks come along and they say, are you serious about this? And they're kind of waiting for the punchline. And I remind people, I say, but for the grace of God, I've been in a really bad place in life. Texas saved me. When I moved to Texas 21 years ago, it was the field, the soil that the seed of my life was able to plant in. And I grew and I flourished, and I'm thankful for Texas. The heart of Texas, I believe, beats in my soul. Those of you who get around me, if I can get you to stand still or walk slow, I'll tell you about Texas. I believe that spirit is contagious. It's far more contagious than COVID. The difference is it's something you want to give away. But the spirit of Texas is under assault. We've got a target on our back from Washington, D.C. Our constitutional rights have been violated at least 17 times in the last 18 months by this governor. And Texas is quite honestly not the Texas that most Texans think it is anymore. So what I'm doing is I'm encouraging you to wake up and fight. Fight for your liberty, fight for your freedom. In 1773, our founding fathers went out into the harbor and spilled tea over taxation without representation because of King George's overreach and his violation of tyranny over their rights. So I'm suggesting that on March 1st, we go down to Travis County and have an Austin Tea Party. And let's throw out that government that no longer represents you, no longer cares about your priorities. And let's make sure that liberty reigns once again in the great state of Texas. Prather2022.com. If you're feeling frisky, go to Beto22.com. It still comes to me. Let's make Texas great, and let's remember the divine hand and providence of God when I say, God bless Texas.
Patriots, I got a PhD in that swamp in Austin. I did. I'm the only elected office holder in the history of the state of Texas that never took any money from the government. No pay, no pension, no health care, no travel vouchers, no per diem, no reimbursements, no nothing. I did that for a reason. That's because I never wanted to work for the government. I worked for the people that sent me there. I'm going to do the same thing as your governor. I was always ranked one of the top 3 most conservative senators in the history of the state of Texas when I was there. I'm a businessman. I've got a different way of seeing things than my opponent. A career politician. Greg had 30 years in elected office. He can't get enough of it. I'm just like you. I'm tired of the lies. I'm tired of the broken and empty promises. Is the border secure? No, it's not. Now, I've got a great plan to secure that border. And like I said, I'm never asking permission from the federal government. Just imagine a Texas where you can own your own home and you can own your own business. Imagine a Texas where the border is secure and we stop all the fentanyl, the sex trafficking that's coming across, and we get fair wages for our workers. Imagine a Texas where you got confidence in your election and your votes aren't being stolen. Patriots, I need your help. Unsheath those old rusted swords of liberty and help me cut the chains of government. Help me awaken the sheep from their slumber, the millions of sheep that have been sleeping forever, so they too can help us restore the liberties that have been stolen from us. Awaken them to the power of the Constitution, the power of the free market, the power of Lord Jesus Christ himself. This is our time. This is the time we've been waiting for. Join me in this revolution of ideas, and the only ammunition we need is our love of Texas. And this is Texas. We're going to get our swagger back. Go to donhuffines.com. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.